Thank you very much. And so before we go into the audience Q&A, audience interaction, I just have a few questions. I actually have quite a few, but I'll just restrict myself to a few questions, and then we'll take some from the audience, and maybe if there's time, I'll come back. The first is really something very basic. I know your colleague, Mike, who came down to Sri Lanka some months back, when he first told me that he's from public policy and government affairs at Google and government, I was quite curious. So tell us a little bit about that relationship, everything from, you talked about innovation policy, then there's internet security, e-government. Why is Google interested in government? And what's that relationship like?
We're interested in government because government regulates us. Oh, we wish we didn't have to be in our heart of hearts. And frankly, we didn't have to be till comparatively recently. 15 years ago, nobody was regulating the internet. Nobody knew the internet. And it was governments take a while to catch up on this. And so we could do a lot of things move forward. And then, the internet becomes more accessible and available more and more places. And so then government becomes more involved. And so we really worry about it. And part of it is that often they don't even understand what we really do, right? I mean, what do we do? So, right, all of you, I hope, are touched every day by some Google product. And I'm hoping you're email users. Maybe you're using an Android operating system phone. You've looked at maps, you've done search, you've watched something on YouTube, all these different ways. But the fact of the matter is you probably don't know how we make our money. Because, right, you're not paying for your Gmail. You're not paying for search. You're watching those YouTube videos for free. And the reality is 95% of our income is from advertising. Actually, more than 95 from advertising. So then trying to explain our business model, right? So I find myself, meeting with government officials, talking to us about, where's our factory, right? We don't have a factory. It's, so explaining to them and making sure that they understand. And look, there are enormously important issues that need to be regulated, right? I mean, protecting people's personal privacy information is incredibly important. Protecting data, making sure that cyber criminals are not allowed to, run rampant across the internet, and making sure that the internet, and I think really very important for us in this part of the world is working with governments and with business, with the communication sector, to get the billions of people who deserve to be online and deserve to be part of this vibrant economy online.
Okay. My second question refers to someone who many of us as economists would have heard about. Someone who wrote a textbook that we all at some point or another refer to, Microeconomics by Hal Varian. Hal Varian is now with Google. What is Hal Varian doing at Google? And if you could tell us a little bit about the kind of data work that you're working on.
Yeah, well, look, we're really lucky to have Hal Varian at Google, and he's an amazing guy and an absolute joy to work with. I mean, just incredible experience. I have to say that Hal talks about the economy and helps us understand economics and helps us understand the economics of our products and how to move them forward. As I say, in my first weeks at Google, I actually got to listen to Hal talk about the economics of print media, print news, and how that works and how it's shifting and how it's so important to have a vibrant, vital, independent news media to make the world work the way it should work, and how the internet was altering that economic model, but also how do you measure and how do you fix it? How do you give them the tools? So he does work like that all the time, and he really is. I mean, I would say there are a couple people I work with at Google, and when you find yourself on an email thread with them, you just sort of pinch yourself and say, this is cool. And I think Hal Varian, for me, is one, and the other is Vint Cerf, who's the father of the internet. You say, wow, rock stars in my life.
My last question before I turn to the audience would be, I've done a little bit of work on innovation, but when I started off, I took a very traditional view. And the only thing that I could or could process was product innovation, something new that you can touch and feel that's gone through some innovation. But now we all know that there's process innovation. You talked about that, whether it's in government services. How do you see some of those ideas of thinking through innovation beyond just products and thinking through processes and the role that the internet plays? Do you see traction for that in countries in South Asia, in developing countries, and how much of a traditional view of innovation is out there that you have to tackle?
Well, I mean, I guess what makes traditional views is that they're the common views, so they're always there, right? I think what the internet does about innovation, in terms of whether it's process or product, is actually gives people who might not have had access to the freshest, newest ideas in innovation, quick access to them, right? So somebody has a great innovative thought in Silicon Valley today, that information is shared with somebody in Colombo same day, right? So it's the quick flow of information, and that just accelerates innovation faster and faster and faster. I mean, it almost becomes, one of the concerns of, worries about the internet is it drives change so fast, it's hard for us all to keep up. But I think it's a great thing because it lets that cross-fertilization not just be in your block, but to be global.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn to the audience now, and we're running a little behind schedule, so I'll ask you to keep your questions very short so that we can take as many as possible. We have one at the back. I'll take that first.
Yep, I have.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Ziaul Haq Mukta. I am from Bangladesh. I have very, short questions, two questions actually. One is, as the internet service providers like Google, you are, around 95% of your earning is coming from the advertisement. So do you think it is possible for Google to spend a certain percentage of your profit, like 5%, in the respective countries for development in different social sectors like education, health, etc.? So that's one. The second one is the internet and the security system of the world, individual security, country security. How you feel about that? Nowadays, there is concerns among the individuals and social movements on the issue of security and internet, especially while the powerful governments are taking information from these kinds of service provider. Thank you.
So sure, let me go with the first question first. I think that, we believe at Google that we do have a responsibility to work to bring the billions of people who aren't online. So obviously that's going to be focused more in developing countries. And so we do that in a number of ways. We do that through part of the company called google.org that focuses on access projects and other projects. We have an emerging markets team which actually works heavily in this part of the world to explore ways that we can improve and expand internet access. Do we do it on a formula of X percent? No. And actually probably we don't want it exactly on that formula, because where we want to do it is we want, we're a 10X kind of company. So we want to be able to do a big project that makes a big difference in a place. We're more inclined towards big and focused as opposed to spreading, incremental change everywhere. In fact, we'd sort of like to test doing something big and broad in one place, demonstrating that something really innovative and new might fail, but if it succeeds, we can apply other places than doing incremental change. On security, look, we take our user security extremely seriously. And in fact, I think you referenced a sort of PRISM, we're suing the U.S. government so we can share more information about that. But what I really want to talk about is every user has a responsibility, needs to be better informed about personal safety. One of the things we talk about all the time around the world is how do users keep themselves safe? So I think that you ought to use encrypted email. Okay? So it means, you have HTTPS. That S is security. Your email should be encrypted. Don't use an email service that's not encrypted. You know what? Don't use good passwords. In fact, don't even just use good passwords. Do what we call two-step verification, where you have a secondary password that you can put in, code that you put in that's generated. That really does an enormous job of protecting you from all kinds of hacking. If someone manages to phish and get your password, they still can't get to your stuff. They don't have the second code. I urge you to search in the encrypted mode, HTTPS. I think those are all things that smart people should do to protect their privacy.
Oh, we have a question. Pushpa at the back. And, okay, now that you're here, Pushpa, Sama, if you go first, and then Pushpa Sharma at the back.
Thank you very much. And it was fascinating to hear the story of Google and the kind of things that you're doing. I'm Samar Verma from India. I must confess that the manner in which you began talking about an average age of a Google employee and then the processes that you took us through, it gave me the impression that probably most of the people in this room would not qualify to be an outstanding employee of Google. And that brings me to the question, which is also partly related to the topic that we wanted to hear from you. What does it take to be an outstanding Google employee, is my question to you. And the reason I would particularly like you to also perhaps draw upon some of those characteristics to talk about. So therefore, are there some lessons that we could learn to ignite innovation and entrepreneurship outside the Google company? Thanks.
I'm trying to think about how to do this succinctly. Actually, truly, in my first year at Google, I was featured as a diverse employee to demonstrate that they hired older people, which I believe they just described graciously as broadly experienced, which I thought was very sweet of them. It's great, I'm incredibly spoiled and lucky to work at Google. I mean, we always top these surveys as cool places to work. And the best part about working at Google is that we get to work with smart people, right? It's more fun to work with smart people doing cool things. But so what are we looking at, though? Well, my number one advice that I wish my children had taken was be a computer scientist. My God, that's the key. But beyond that, I think that what are we looking at when we hire? So one of the things we always say is you better be someone who's good dealing with ambiguity. If you like things in a linear fashion, you're not going to be happy at Google. Things are always changing. You're changing teams. You're doing things that are different. You need to be fairly much a self-starter, creative. We are enormously collaborative. If you're not someone who's comfortable working in a big group, it's not a good place for you. It's all those things. And then we always talk about, what are the things that we know, sort of the things we know to be true. And that's, I think, what keeps us focused. So we know that we want to cast the widest possible net in sharing knowledge within the company, that's how we get to solutions. Inside, we're incredibly transparent in information sharing because we know that it might not be who we expect who has the answer to our problem. I think that we're incredibly tolerant. We're diverse. Look, I work in the Singapore office. On any given day, we have probably between 25 and 30 different nationalities in the office. So I think that diversity is important too. But it's mostly, we're looking for smart and flexible. And it sure helps to have a reasonable sense of humor and a slow temper.
Thank you. Pushpa?
Thank you. My name is Pushpa Sharma. I work with Sati from Nepal. My question basically relates to the access to the internet about the different groups of people. Now we know that because of the IT revolution, of course, the breeze between the developing countries has been narrowed quite substantially. But still, when you look at the developing countries and LDC specifically within these countries, access to internet of a large majority of the people is still not there. So in that sense, who are the people who are capable are getting even more able in terms of access and then the other opportunities that it creates. But the people who don't have that access and then who are not able are getting even down. So the breeze, I think, in a way, has been even widened over there. And as you just said that you're looking for fresh, smart people in Google, which means that you are looking for those who already have that access and the capability and not for those who don't have that access. So in that context, what do you see as the barriers? How do you see that this gap can be narrowed down so that we look at innovation, entrepreneurship through use of the IT also, not only for those who already are in the upper tier, but also at the bottom level of the development paradigm?
And do you think we can take one more question
Okay.
also together?
Okay.
Dr. Akmal Hussain. And we're going to have to take maybe one final question.
So you want me to?
No, we'll
Wait,
just
hold on.
take the next ones. And
Okay,
do you
we'll
mind
take
if we
both
bunch
of
it up?
No, fine.
Okay.
Thank you for your fascinating talk. My question is that each time a user uses Google services, in a sense, he or she places trust in the Google that the information will be secure and will be respected. And in a sense, all transactions, as the new institutional economics shows, all transactions are based on a certain trust. And I think Google probably conducts a larger number of transactions than perhaps any other platform in terms of information exchange. Now, after the revelations of Mr. Snowden, what steps is Google taking to protect the security of information or personal information of individuals, organizations, and states?
Sure. Okay, I'll go. Let me do that first. I think that we challenge, look, we admit, like, then there are lawful requests for data, and there are often lawful requests that are overly broad, issued through courts. And we fight back on them all the time. If we think a request is overly broad, and I think I read a figure once that it's the vast preponderance of requests we get, we believe are overly broad, we negotiate and push back to narrow the scope of the request as much as we can. We always seek, and we don't always get, permission to inform the person whose data has been requested that it's been requested, so they know. We were the first company to publish what we call a transparency report. And in that transparency report, we note the number of requests we get from governments for data and the categories. So people are aware. We think that the public at large should be aware. Quite honestly, these from the Foreign Intelligence Court requests cannot actually be listed at this point in time, and that's why we're in court in the US to get permission to share that. We think that if people have a sense of the scope of the questions, not only will they be more aware and comfortable, perhaps, but also the fact that the number of requests made will be disclosed keeps governments honest and restrained. And I think it's important. We take it very seriously. We have very strict rules. We do not respond to a request when a police department or somebody comes and says, hey, just show us. Never, ever, ever. On the issues of access, I'm going to say quickly, look, the reality is everybody, we all, Google, every company, every government, everyone needs to do a better job at expanding access for people. Now, lots of things are doing that. Access is growing quickly, just not growing quickly enough, right? So as people shift to smartphones and the price of smartphones come down and the price of data comes down in many places, people will get access. look, we're doing things like Project Loon, which you may have read about, with the balloons that travel through the stratosphere to bring internet, Wi-Fi internet connectivity to rural and out and distant, hard-to-reach areas. I mean, that's something we do. We're seeing really great projects that we're part of, and also cool projects that other people are doing to sort of bring Wi-Fi to small communities, to increase that access. And we do that. We have a sizable team of people that work on that absolutely every day, and we're going to work more and more. In fact, it's one of the things we most talk about. Certainly outside of the US, we talk about access because we think it's the most important thing we can do to drive economic success in the region.
Final two questions. I'll ask you to keep it really short. Ambassador Nihal Rodko, do you have a question? Okay. Dr. Shekhar Shah, you have the final question.
Right up front, I was looking.
So I just wanted to follow up on Akmal Hussein's question. And that has to do with, well, first just thank you for your talk. And thank you to Google, really, for having changed the world in ways that we couldn't imagine 10 years back. But with that in mind, and following up on his question, the differential governance surrounding access to data within the United States for US citizens versus everybody else is at some point going to pose a problem. And do we need to be thinking about an international protocol for governing the internet and access to information? What the NSA gets today says it only gets for foreign citizens, but it won't get it for US citizens. So there is already asymmetry, and Google is very much at the heart of it, along with a number of other companies.
Yeah, and I think we all agree that it needs to be clear what information can be accessed, how it's accessed, and who it's accessed by. Now, in fairness, in a world where there are, in fact, bad guys, right? There are legitimate needs for access to information, and we all want to stop the bad guys, right? We want the child pornographers taken off the streets and locked up. We don't want, and we all want to cooperate on that. And, you know, the people stealing your credit cards and your identity, we all want to stop them. None of us want terrorists run. So we have all those things that are legitimate needs, but I do think we all agree, we certainly agree, that it needs to be a clear process. People need to know how it's happening. While the specific request for information may need to be obscured during a legal process, the general terms of how it's done and the volume of request should be transparent, and who has access and what are the rules under which your personal information can be accessed should be something you're aware of. We absolutely agree. We are working hard and will continue to seek permission and lobby hard in the US and around the world to make sure that happens.
And I have a final closing question for you. I noticed that Google has been working with some state governments, and I noticed a couple of them in India. What's the kind of response you're getting when you're working with these state governments? Was it they that called Google in? What's the partnership like? And really, what I'm trying to get at is, where do you see some of the most interesting and open initiatives going on right now, where Google is working with governments and countries and organizations to push the innovation agenda, innovation policy agenda? South Asia, beyond, where the most exciting ones?
I think it's push-pull. I mean, sometimes we come to them and we say, we see something cool going on here, we'd like to explore it. Sometimes they reach out to us and we feel that we have an affinity. I think that one of the reasons we actually find ourselves in many cases liking relationships with state and regional governments is because it's, because they're smaller, because they're nimbler, they can move quicker, it's a better test bed. So we do that. I think that actually we've seen some really interesting ideas for promoting SME work in Punjab and Karnataka, where we did these 2 reports. We've seen, it's interesting, you sort of see, we found that actually in Thailand we had really great partnership with governments, with the government, with universities and with others to bring small and medium-sized businesses on board. So we did a project where we had, we brought 100,000 SMEs that had absolutely no internet presence at all online over the course of a year. I think it was 110,000 in the end. And we were, had tools, we were bringing them out. The government ministry in charge of small and medium-sized businesses was excited about it. They helped promote. We partnered with the universities. And what we knew, and it was understanding, a cultural understanding too. So these little businesses, they didn't have websites yet. They were web scared. We came and went, and so we did these. We had a very simple way to sign up. You could create a website in 15 minutes, right? Register a domain, create a website. But still, that was scary. So we would do these events around the country, frequently 2-day weekend events. University students would get college credit. They'd come and work at it. They'd sit down with some nice auntie who was wanting to bring on her website for her little restaurant or whatever, and they, hands-on walk them through it. While that was going on that day, there was actually the Thai post office was running seminars that people could go in and out of about logistics, how to ship, how to receive. A bank was there talking about how to get the financing and how to do payments, right? We were running different levels of programming about how would you advertise online, how would you use Google Analytics to understand how your business, but it was a full package, right? And seeing that, but it was pulling together all sorts of people. That worked really well. Frankly, a similar project might not work well in exactly the same place. You see, but you find the sweet spot. Some local governments are really willing to try e-government stuff. Some absolutely not. And what we do find is pockets of schools that really both want to take advantage of online activities, but also really want to get involved in the community and bring them up. The students are much better at this. And so when we see those pockets of where you have a student population that really wants to engage, we like to be part of that.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was really interesting and refreshing from what we've been discussing over the last 3 days, something new. And you talked about these pockets of progress, and I think that's really, we see that in all our countries. You see that you talked about in states in India, you see that in Sri Lanka, where they're trying to move towards open data, have crime data on your mobile. Hopefully someone will create a mobile app for that. So pockets of progress. But thank you very much for joining us, and we have a small token of appreciation for you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.